Order. Roll call, please.
Here. Here. Oh. Here.
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 We have a quorum. First item on the agenda is a discussion over the river. I don't see Sierra, so we'll go on to...
I'll just talk to him.
Okay, Andrew Brumseth.
Thank you, Your Honor. Members, good morning. The request this morning from the Downtown Riverfront Council is to have the 2019 Over the River event declared as a community festival, which would allow the city, under state statute, to waive city charges related to the event. And that is their request. We did that the last couple years as well. And if the council is wishing to entertain that again this year, we certainly would be able to make that work. So that's the request before you this morning. If the council agrees, we'll push that to the city council meeting on Monday.
Thanks, Andrew. Any thoughts?
I would say we charge them whatever the temperature is that day.
Hopefully it's
So
warmer than it
below
was
zero,
yesterday.
then how does that work?
I would make the recommendation that we do that.
Thanks, Andrew.
I'll second that.
Thanks, Jim. Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That motion carries. Drug Task Force Mutual Aid Agreement. I'll call on our Public Safety Director, Kyle Bergeron.
Thank you, Your Honor. Thanks to Carolyn, she pointed out two typos within the actual joint powers agreement. One is under Article 4 that just describes the date. I believe that date should be December 31st, 2019 versus 16. And then the other one is in Article 9, talks about the agreement commencing on January 1st, 2017. I have sent email to the the task force secretary in Alexandria to get those cleaned up. But otherwise, this agreement has been in place for nearly 30 years. We've been a member of the task force since its inception. And from time to time, we do have to renew the joint powers agreement that's before you. I think this year is probably a grant. We're submitting a grant for the task force, and hence I'm thinking this is the reason why we have to renew the joint powers agreement, just to have it up to date. So I am just merely asking or making the recommendation that the city authorize the signing of the joint powers agreement.
Thank you, Chief. Any questions, Jim?
I would offer that, and I do have a question.
Yeah, Jim, give us a second there.
I'll second it.
Thanks, Carolyn. Go ahead, Jim.
Do we have an officer that's assigned to the task force now?
We don't currently have an officer assigned directly to the task force. We do have someone that is assigned to narcotics investigations, and they work with the task force. But there's a strategic reason why right now we don't have somebody assigned directly to the task force.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? If not, all in favor of the recommendation to bring this to the council, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That motion carries. Thanks, Chief. Item number 3 is an update on the codification process, and I'll call it to be Andrew Brumseth.
Yeah, thank you, Your Honor. Members, as you all know, we've been working with American Legal Publishing over the last several months on recodification of our ordinances, and throughout that process, they've done a fairly or extremely comprehensive review of our existing ordinance, and they have given us some recommendations now for things that could be removed and further things that will be changed. And I know various members of staff have been meeting about this as they pertain to their individual sections. And I know there will be other changes forthcoming, but we wanted to have the council direct the city attorney to start making a number of these recommended city changes. We've highlighted a handful of them within the memo that are either outdated language, they're duplicates, or they're covered in other areas, like in our franchise agreements related to cable television operations. So I envision that we'll be having several of these changes made in the coming days related to removing old ordinances or updating language to simplify and make it consistent with current state statute. But this is step one for us and looking for the ability for the city attorney to start working on this and bring it back to the city council.
Thank you, Andrew. Any questions from
I would offer that.
Thank you, Jim.
Second that.
Tom, any further questions?
I just got one.
Yeah, you bet, Anthony.
One of the things that could we look at kind of a bring to kind of like, an early kind of review would be the ability when somebody wants to obviously like replat something, or split or divide a property or sell a property, that we kind of look at language to add in there that if they have any past due accounts with the city or property taxes or under litigation on the piece of property, that they have to get all that cleaned up before before the plat can even go to planning for splitting.
Yeah, Your Honor, Councilmember Hicks, that section of the code is actually the next one that we're looking at, and with Sourcewell on board now, they're actually going to do a deep dive into that. I will put that on their radar and tell them to research that. I don't know if that's legal or not, but we'll certainly entertain that.
It sounds like the county does something similar.
Okay.
The county has some language in theirs, so maybe it's a question of following what the county does.
Yeah, I'll get
At
theirs
least
for
have somebody
reference too.
review.
Yep, for sure.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any other questions? If not, all in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That motion carries. Item number 4 is an update on the 2020 sales tax questions, and we'll call it City Administrator Andrew Brumseth.
Yeah, thank you, Your Honor. Members, I was hoping to have a more robust update for you today, but we have not had good luck in hearing back from our tax chairs that we were hoping to meet with. So a few of us met with city lobbyist Joel Carlson shortly after our last meeting and had a good dialogue with him about the process as it pertains to these sales tax questions. And we all agreed that the next step would be to arrange meetings with the chairs of the tax committees in both the House and Senate. On the House side, that's Representative Paul Marquardt from Dilworth, and on the Senate side, it's Senator Roger Chamberlain from Lino Lakes. So those are the two we're hoping to meet with. We've got messages and calls into both of their offices, and as of today, I haven't been able to schedule an exact time, but we're working on doing that. I will mention that December 16th, the city council meeting on that date, is our target to have all of these things resolved in a total game plan in place. That's the meeting that we're hoping to pass a local resolution, which would give us the ability to bring these things to the legislature. Excuse me. And then January 31st of 2020 is the deadline to submit to those chairs that I just referenced all of the information that's going to be coming before their committee. I'm less worried about that because they know that we're trying to get something on their calendar and that we're definitely on their radar. So that's what we're working towards. As soon as we get that meeting scheduled with the two tax chairs, we'll have it, and then we'll report back to the city council as soon as possible, because it may change our course of action and or necessitate the need for the groups to meet again and maybe do some changes on the fly. So it's still fluid at this point, but working hard to try to get those answers and the clarification we need to be successful.
Thanks, Andrew. Any questions on that process? All right, thank you. Item number 5 is the fire department renovation assessment, and I'll call on Fire Chief Ryan Muckow. Morning, Chief.
Good morning, Mayor, members of the council. So this morning, kind of it's a spin-off of the sales tax, but also just trying to do some hopefully some good due diligence with our fire station and kind of what the state that it's in. We are making a recommendation to initiate public improvement project number 9507, which has Schultz and Associates coming in and looking through our facility from the mechanical side, from the structural side, and just kind of an overall look at it. What can we do? I know we're one of the 5 options on the potential for a local option sales tax, and just trying to really do some good due diligence for not only that project, but also even looking forward if that wasn't to come to fruition. What state is our building actually in? So with that, they put together a package that's $9,500 for them to come in and do an assessment, and looking for the approval to do that. And I guess overall, we do feel, sales tax project or not, this really does help us plan ahead with that facility and what we may be needing to do for repairs. Currently, we have been working with April quite a bit on some of the maybe surface things that need to be looked at, but that's not at all diving into some of the mechanical and electrical areas that have been modified over the years since it was constructed in 1976. So that, if there's any questions.
Yeah, so I have a question. So talking about the potential sales tax project, does a timing align? Like how long, what's the time frame for them to make initial assessments so that, is that in line with where we're at with the legislative schedule?
They can, and in their project understanding of it, knowing that December 16th is a local deadline, they can have some material they feel ready for that point, and then also a design package that would be ready, I think the January 31st deadline to the legislature. So they did note that in the proposal that they would work within those time parameters.
Okay, thank you. Other questions, Ryan? And then funding, like, do you have funds available from just like your general maintenance
It would be
fund?
charged to the project like we've done with
Got
others.
it.
And then if the sales tax project goes forward, then it would get funded through that process. If it doesn't go forward, then we'd have to fund it out of future capital outlay budgets of the fire department, so.
Thanks, Bill. Other questions, council? If not, I guess we should have is there a recommendation to move this to the council? Jim? Scott, thank you. Sure. Other questions?
I think it's a question probably pertaining to and a request of another request of city staff, but we have a lot of projects on the go presently, and I wonder if we can kind of get a sort of a summary of the projects and what the potential cost is going to be, what we've kind of committed to that project to date, and what the funding is, and kind of anticipated timeline. For example, like last week, obviously, we voted to spend $800,000 on the downtown, and with what we've already spent, that project's going to be at almost $1 million. And obviously we've got the dairy project, which is sort of linked to the Port Authority, and then we've got a variety of trail projects that are out there. And I'm just concerned or cognizant of the fact that we keep spending cash, and we're deferring this, and at some point in time, like everything, chickens always come home to roost, and we're going to get hit with all this money. And if we don't get the funding for some of these things, then we have to fund the project, and out of basically taxpayers' money. So I mean, I'm an advocate or a proponent of kind of the fire department because I've kind of used them too many times. So, but it's another project, and it's going to be another commitment. So I think we'll have to be aware that this is cash that's going out that's not necessarily getting replaced easily. So I think I support this, but I think we just need to be aware of how much money we're actually into the community for.
Thanks, Anthony. Any other questions, comments before we vote on this recommendation? All in favor of the motion to move this to the council, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That motion carries. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is a surplus equipment update. I'll call on Len Taylor. Good morning, Len.
Morning, Your Honor. Thank you. Just going through some of the storage buildings and storage yards, we've identified numerous pieces of equipment that are outdated and not in use anymore. So you've got the list there before you. I did add another item is 2 submersible sewage pumps to be included on that list. But that list is a start on cleaning up of the buildings and cleaning out so we can have more space in all of our storage areas.
Thank you. Guy, any questions? So we need a motion to move this to the council, declare these items surplus. Would someone like
Make
to
that
offer?
motion, Your Honor.
Thank you, Tom.
I'll second, Your Honor.
Thank you, Justin. questions on any of these items? Pretty straightforward, yeah, Anthony?
I mean, what do we actually get for this? I mean, we put a lot of this surplus stuff up for sale. Do we actually ever sell any of it? I mean, do we actually sell some of this stuff?
We do, actually, yeah,
Right.
and I can get you a history of all that we've sold and how much we've made off of
Just
those
kind of
sales.
curious.
Yeah.
You know, because we're always selling surplus equipment, but we, you know, you always come asking to sell it, but you never come with a big fat check.
No, it doesn't come in as big as what goes out. That's for
At least the check has it.
Yeah.
All right, any
Thanks.
questions? All in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That motion carries. Thanks, Guy. Item number 7 is hangar sale to West Central Ag Air. We'll call on our city engineer, Brian Yuvaro.
Thank you, Your Honor, and good morning, members. West Central Ag Air, it's a commercial licensed agricultural sprayer that's located at the north end of our airport property. If you just refer to the Exhibit A, I have included in your packet. Just want to show Trunk Highway 210 is kind of the road that runs west-east. West Central Ag Air's new hangar that they recently completed, actually a few years ago, is centrally located in this map. If you look to the east, which is right on this map, we have an old abandoned hangar that the city acquired some time ago. To the best of my knowledge, this hangar was purchased to regulate future development in this area and more so have general aviation located closer to the AD building, which is located to the south. So it is restricted in this area, but with the increase in business operations, like I said, West Central Ag Air is requesting to purchase this hangar. And in turn, they want to remodel it or actually make improvements to it and pretty much use it for storage for their operations and everything. So I looked at through the sale on Artell County's evaluation, and it's listed about $1,200 for this building. It is in a deteriorated condition, so I think it's more than a fair price. So if acceptable for the sale of this hangar, West Central Ag Air would also they would enter into a land lease agreement, which is typical for our type of private hangars on our airport property. But then, like I said, this would give him the ability to make his own investments into this hangar to his standards. So at this time, I'm requesting an authorization of sale of the city-owned hangar, Exhibit A, to West Central Ag Air in the amount of $1,200.
Thanks, Brian. So question for you. So what does that mean exactly, the land lease, the common land lease? So they're just buying the building and leasing
The
land
building,
that's
yes.
on?
We still retain the land rights and everything. They pay us a few cents per square foot on an annual basis.
And that's what other properties out
Yes.
there, other facilities out there are doing. So-
Yes.
And that's, like you mentioned, I think you mentioned the 1,200 is what the county assessor has it valued at. It's
Yes.
deteriorating, and it's going to actually put some money into updating.
It would turn on to the tax rolls and everything from.
Someone like to make a motion to bring that to the council?
I will. I've got one question.
Scott, thank you.
Second that.
Tom, second. All right, go ahead, Scott.
On the map, there's a couple of long buildings to the west of the new building. Are those already owned by West Central, or? just
No, they're
curious what
not.
the-
They're privately held by other parties. Those are ones that we regulate. So, we're trying to, like I said, we allow them. We don't allow major repairs to them because we'd want to relocate everything farther to the south by the AD building. But it's been my take on that. I'm not looking to evict anything in that particular area, but we're looking to try to phase it out. But this hangar that we're referring to right here with the sale, it was kind of along the same lines. However, what the area is reserved for is a commercial egg spraying. He's just looking for new facility storage, and I think that's be very amenable to that personally, to help him out with that.
I'm sorry.
Just out of curiosity, does the term AD building have any particular significance, or is it just a
Oh,
random?
sorry, arrival departure building.
Oh,
main
okay, there we
terminal.
go. Okay, sounds good. I was sitting here trying to figure that out. So, thank you.
It's another acronym.
Yes.
They're
They're full of them.
Any other great questions for?
That's a good one. That's a good one. Kind of the question of the day right there.
All right. All in favor of that motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That motion carries. Thanks, Brian. Item number 8 on the agenda is a Minnesota Investment Fund loan to Rich's Properties, and I'll call on our Community Development Director, Clara Beck. Morning, Clara.
Morning, Mayor. Good morning, council members. I am bringing forward a request to authorize the mayor and the city administrator to execute the appropriate documents related to a loan with Riches Property LLC. They are going to be taking ownership of the building downtown on Union Avenue that is the old, it was a mortuary at one point. It's got kind of the stucco. It's a historic space, and they are going to be putting a business in there. So this recommendation is coming from business development from Fergus Falls and from my department. We've all looked at the paperwork for the loan. It seems like a really good fit and a good idea to get some new business downtown, and we are looking for your recommendation to move forward.
Thank you, Clara. Someone like to offer
Leave
that?
that, you know,
I'll second that, Your Honor.
Thank you. Justin, any questions, comments from Business Development Fergus Falls?
oh, it's fairly straightforward. It's what's Herzog's office now. So,
Got it.
I mean,
Oh, yeah.
so it'll get traffic in the, you know,
Got
it's
it.
going to be an insurance agency.
Okay,
So financial services.
excellent. Any?
And MIF stands for,
Minnesota Investment Fund, it's one of our revolving loan funds.
it's acronym day, Tom.
Yeah, right?
I thought of a new acronym yesterday, SMA, so many acronyms. I was at a meeting where there were a lot of acronyms.
All right, any other questions for Clara? All right, all in favor of that motion to bring this to the council signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That motion carries. Thank you, Clara.
Thank you.
Item number 9 is 2020 utility rates, and we'll call on Finance Director Bill Sonmore. Morning, Bill.
Good morning. Thank you. Let's see. We have an on switch on this one?
I think it's on.
I'm being blind. There we go. Or did you click it at the same time as I did? We'll see here. Well, good morning, and today we're going to look through our utility funds. I'm not looking for any action from you or approval on these today, but certainly any questions you may have, and you can also follow up with me with questions after this. These utility rate adjustments will be included within the budget presentation that will be coming to you at the first meeting in December, on December 2nd. So wanted to come give you a little more background on these. Overall, the rates are pretty much the same as what I presented in September within that budget document, with the exception we did decrease not as much of an increase on the stormwater rates. So we brought that down a little bit in here. All right, so it's working, Lynn. Thank you. So I'd like to start out with just a snapshot of what we're looking at in total. So we're looking at water, sewer, storm, the Barriage garbage, and recycling areas. So a total increase of 5.5% on a residential utility bill that uses 6,000 gallons of water. We choose that because within this we also use an AE2S. They are a engineering firm, and they do a survey of area states, including Minnesota, North, South Dakota. So for comparative purposes, it's nice to have that comparing that way. So you can see overall, we're looking at water being our largest increase, and I've talked about that for probably the last 3 or 4 years. We've been taking an aggressive approach on the water fund. We have some large projects coming, and we'll see that in this presentation as well. But looking at another 10% increase in water rates. Sewer, 3% to keep up with inflation. Stormwater, the percentage gets to be a little bit higher, but it's of course because the rate is smaller on that. We're looking at going up 50 cents. That's where in the proposal I had for you in September, I had a 75-cent increase in there, so brought that down to 50. Garbage doing 3%. The garbage disposal going up 5.7%, and that equals what we're doing with Otter Tail County. Our cost of disposal are going up as we go around and collect the garbage and dispose of it with Otter Tail County. So our costs are going up 5.7, so I'm passing that through as far as what we collect. And then the waste management tax follows, and then just on a percentage basis of the garbage and the disposal. Tree management, $1.50, we are not changing that. And recycling, we're not changing that as well. So that's kind of the overall snapshot. I've pretty much given you the whole presentation there, and but Jim.
Question. On garbage, have we seen a decrease in the amount of garbage since we put out the recycling bin?
Yes, we will get to that in here, but the answer is yes. We did see that in the first year, and I started reviewing some info I got from Otter Tail County yesterday, and it looks like the garbage and the waste stream went down some, and the recycling went up some in tonnages. I want to go through that a little bit more, and I want to have some more specific stats for you when I come in December, but as I was looking at it yesterday, that appears to what I'm seeing. Now, it almost looks like we have more tonnage coming out of the garbage, certainly, than what's going up in recycling. So I don't have an explanation for you for that, but that's what I was seeing yesterday. Good news is a decrease in those garbage tons being pulled out of that waste stream. So we'll touch on that a little bit more here. Just a slide for you to show when did we change rates last. So water, sewer, storm, refuse, and the demolition, we all changed last year. Recycling, tree management, and the dumpster roll-offs was back in 17. So overall for water, sewer, and storm, so garbage is not included in this slide. You can see where Fergus falls, where we fall in those rate structures compared to other cities. So we like to show you, it helps, you know, when we're recommending making these changes, where are we, towards the top, the bottom, in the middle? So here we see, you know, we kind of fall in the middle. So refuse collection, we certainly look at the operational costs. We continue to see rising costs. And I picked up on that, you know, now in 2020, Otter Tail County, I've mentioned that to you, that our tipping fee or our disposal costs are going up 5.67%, or up to $114.70 a ton. That has gone up over the years pretty steady. So that's where we're recommending that 3% residential commercial fee, as well as the 5.7 in the disposal. Recycling, we implemented in 2017. We did talk about as far as the waste stream goes, so I won't go into that anymore. But leaving recycling the same. I do want to, a side note, the one thing Sandy and I are looking at is, do we come back to you with a recommendation at some point and change the structure a bit? Not for that $6 a month residential, but for some of the commercial customers, because right now we charge $7.58 no matter what size commercial customer you are. So, you know, we certainly have different ranges of that. We have to see what makes sense, and, you know, if it's a larger building or something like that with many residents in it, you know, should that be at a different rate than $7.58? So it's something that's been chewing at me a while, and I want to look at that. But recycling, when you get into the nuts and bolts of it, is very complex. So it's not an easy thing just to change. So we're working on that, and if we come up with something, we'll come back to you with that. Tree management, as you recall, Public Works bought that tree waste burner. I believe that is going very well. I think it's going well because I'm seeing our costs are lower this year. We're not paying that external contractor to grind all that, spending anywhere from $60,000 to $100,000 a year. We're doing it ourselves with that burner, and not hearing much for complaints. We've had a couple maybe from the smoke, but overall, the way that burner works, it burns so hot that you don't get a lot of smoke with it. So, Guy, anything to add? But I think it's working well.
That's cool.
So that was a good choice. So therefore, we're not looking at any changes in those tree management fees. Demolition debris. We, as you recall, had to construct a new cell, have that lined. We have to collect the leachate. That's the runoff that kind of seeps through that demolition cell. We went from $16 a cubic yard up to $24 a cubic yard when we built that cell. Last year, we increased that $1 because we could see we weren't quite keeping up. Yeah, we're still not. But I'm not recommending any changes because we're pretty high right now, and I kind of want to go another year and see where we're at. So So we're recommending leaving that alone, but we are not making money on that area of demolition debris. So want to look at that a little bit more. Maybe it's not filling quite as fast. Our engineering department will be measuring that yet this fall. I think later in November is probably when your people shoot the grade of that. Then we'll get a feel for how fast is it filling. And of course, if it doesn't fill as quickly, it's going to last longer. And that means I'm probably depreciating it faster than what it's actually filling. So we're going to look at that, but leaving the rate alone right now. I'm not comfortable changing that at this time. So our refuse operations, you can see operating revenues and expenses from 15 through what we're estimating in 19. Just going to flip ahead in I have a couple notes here. So you may ask, why are we down in 19 compared to last year? And that would be the depreciation for that new demolition cell, which was very expensive to construct. I think we had just about $1 million into that. So now we are depreciating that a first full year in 2019. So that hits the operating costs. About $100,000 of depreciation over last year, as well as the leachate treatment. That has to go to the sewer plant and be treated. And that's about $36,000 is what we're seeing in the cost. And that is also about the amount that we planned on that would be within the structure. But that explains our change from 18 to 19. Jim?
Depreciation, how many years do you do that over? Is that over 10 years?
Yes. A big part of it is over 10 years because we have a 10-year permit and we expect these two cells that would be planned within that to be 5 years each. Now there is another large portion of that demolition cell. Sandy, how many years? Do you remember? Is it 40 years? Yeah. I think we're depreciating over 40 years. That is for the whole demolition site that should last 40 years. So we did split it up between the two, but you can see that 10 years is where we're getting the larger hit of depreciation for what will be used up in that 10 years. Good question. So if we did no revenue increases in the refuse fund, and this, I've said this every year, but if we just left it the same, but our costs kept rising, of course, our operating income would go down and our change in that position, our net worth of that fund would significantly drop down. And you can see it would go negative in 2020 and just head south. There's what would happen with the cash balance in that fund. By 2024, we would actually go negative in that if we did nothing with rate increases. But that stands to reason, because if your costs go up but you don't have any revenue changes, of course it's going to drain on your reserves. So we have some capital improvements in the refuse fund. So out in 2023 is when we would be looking to open the next cell in that demolition cell, and then also close the cell we're currently operating in. So that's the $550,000. 2024 would be a leachate, lift station and force main. So for $450,000. So some big capital dollars, and that's why we need to have the funds on hand so that when the time comes, we have the cash to open a new one, and we don't borrow money at that time to do that. Kind of say that throughout this whole utility analysis. I've built rates that look at not bonding in the future. As you recall, we just did a bond for the water fund and stormwater this last year. But the goal of these rates is that we can cash flow our improvements so that we continually do that rather than borrowing and then saving the interest. So then projections, if we do a 3% and then a 5.7 in the disposal, this also makes the assumption that we are making 3% increases each year to keep up with inflation and 4% on that disposal fee. I'm hoping it comes down a little bit. We've had some significant increases in the last couple years, but hopefully that will level out now as we go forward. And then the cash balance would be manageable. Just noting, yeah, it looks like it's dipping in 2024, but after that, it would start coming back up some again as well. So in what we study, because when we look at this, we go out about 10 years. Sewer fund operations, same scenario here. You can see from 2017 to 2018, we had a negative $201,000 change in net position, and then we came up in 2018 to 317. That big change was the result of depreciation going off. That original sewer plant was fully depreciated in 2017, so our income came back around as well. There's our estimate for 2019. We are higher in the revenue in 2019 because we've had additional leachate charges from outside agencies this year. So if we did no revenue increases again, same scenario, you would see that operating income drop down. And then the change in that position as well. I'd like to point out in 2021, you see that large dip down, and you may say, what are you doing in that year that it shows like a big loss? That would be the demolition and cleanup of the old wastewater treatment plant. So that's not a capitalized asset. You're actually cleaning up something we have. So we are expensing that in that year and then coming back up. So it's not a depreciable asset. We're just cleaning up an old asset that is sitting there vacant. Again, that cash balance of the sewer fund would drop from 9.1 million down to 6.4 with no increases. The capital improvements for the sewer fund, you can see we have lots of things on the horizon there. So the highest being 1.43. But this again, I'm planning to do this without bonding, which we did that in the Mount Faith project. We spent just over $1 million, I believe. We paid cash for those new sewer lines over by the school district area. So this would be the rate structure for the sewer fund. 3% on the flat and the flow. And then here would be with revenue increases. Again, you still see that dip down in 2021 because of that demo project, but then change in that position, keeping that around that 100,000 or so. And again, we're trying to manage this cash balance going out with all those capital improvements that we saw. And there's what that cash balance would do. We would still drop down some as well. But I go back to when that plant was fully depreciated, really that is the year we should have the highest cash balance because you depreciated that plant all those years, building up the cash to do these types of improvements. And this is where we fall with our sewer rates. So we, are below the middle section there, but it's good to, again, have that picture of where we fall with other cities when we're talking about all this. Stormwater funds. Here's our projections on that one. This is where we've been, 15 through 19. Again, if we did no revenue increases, same scenario. You'd have the decreases in your operating revenue and your change in that position. Cash balance would drop down as well. And then our capital improvements going out, 350,000. Now, when I went through the capital improvement plan, I did level this out some and actually added some dollars in here because this year when we did the Mount Faith project, that was $705,000 for that one project to do the stormwater portion. Now, that was kind of an unusual project that had extra stormwater over what a normal project would have. That's why I didn't put $700,000 in each year here, but dropped it down to $350,000. Brian and I talked about that. That's probably a reasonable figure going forward. Again, the Mount Faith project had a lot of extra stormwater issues over there. So here's with revenue increases, so maintaining those positive operating income, change in that position, and the cash balance actually coming back up some. But again, when you can spend $350,000, sometimes $500,000 a year, it doesn't take long to go through that cash balance. Proposed changes, here's that 50 cents I talked about. This was 75 cents in September when I talked to you, so brought that down a bit. That's where we fall with stormwater. We're a little bit more towards the higher end of stormwater. I always like to add on this that when you compare to other cities, if they're not doing it with a utility fund, cities would be doing it with their general fund. All your street sweeping, everything going into your general fund. So all cities are doing managing stormwater. We choose to do it through a utility fund. Water fund operations. This is our last utility fund here. This is where we've been. We've again taken some larger increases over the prior few years, at 10% the last couple, I believe. If we did no revenue increases going forward on water, same scenario, the downward slide. Look at what would happen with that cash balance in our water fund. By 2024, we'd be down to $715,000. Capital improvements. I want to get to this slide, so I touch on these a little bit. So in 2020, we have the reservoir number 2. We have 2 reservoirs up by the water plant. They're big water tanks in the ground that our treated water goes into, and they act like a water tower. They're storage, and since they're up on the hill, they provide pressure. We would be rehabbing reservoir number 2 in 2020. We bonded for that project this year. Didn't get to it this year, but we'll get to that now next year in 2020. We also have some plant improvements in there, the Junius project in there for $250,000, and the Highway 210 utilities. If you remember, they're shallow and we need to put those further into the ground. That's $145,000 in each the water and the sewer funds to send those a little bit lower. 2021, then we'd look at reconstruction of reservoir number 1. And I know on our next slide we have the dates when they were put into service, so we'll touch on that there. 2023, then we have the Cleveland Water Tower rehab for $750,000 of that 1.5. That would be rehab that would include painting of the exterior and the interior of that. So reservoir number 1, built in 1914, it's time to have that out of service. That's why we're doing number 2 first. Once that is rehabbed, go back and reconstruct, certainly pull this one out of use. And if we need to reconstruct that, that's what it would be, and we have it built in there right now. Now, our engineering department will tell us if we get to a point and we don't need to reconstruct that, then we'll certainly come back with you, but so far it's on the plan. And then 97, that Cleveland Tower was built. We are looking at rehabbing that for $750,000. And then the one out on the west side was built in 2007. That's going to need the same repair and reconditioning just to keep it maintained, and that's $1.2 million. And that's out a couple years after the tower in 2023, I believe. Oops. So water fund, again, 10% revenue increase. And then looking at that for 20 and 21, and then bringing it down to 5% after that. Water fund rates, again, these are flat and flow charges. I'm recommending these adjustments to both those rates. Here is the chart for the flow with that 10% increase. And here are the flat charges, same 10% increase. And here is then operations of that water fund with these increases. Here's the cash balance. Again, so we're not building great cash balances in our water fund through this, but again, this is doing all those improvements and trying to do it without bonding for those. And here's where we fall with those water rates. We are towards the lower level of those cities that report softening. So that is key to note. We are a city that softens the water at the plant. Therefore, all the residents don't have to have water softeners and purchase salt and haul salt. It is taken care of at the plant. That is more expensive, and our rates are a little bit higher. But as you can see, even with these 10% rate increases, look at where we fall with that. Now, the next slide, when you compare to all water systems in that rate study, then we're a little bit higher, of course, but that's comparing to plants that don't soften their water. And here, we're getting to the end. This is where we started with that summary. And then, so we did bring this, as far as calendar goes, we brought this to you in September. Updating you today, again, no action today. Want you to have some time to digest all of this. Come back with the budget presentation on December 2nd. And then the refuse water and stormwater rates would become effective for the bills that are mailed the end of January. And then the sewer rates would be recalculated in April. We recalculate sewer rates once a year based on that winter usage of water when people aren't using water outdoors, and try to just capture that water that's going down the drain. So I believe that is it. So
Thank you, Bill.
You bet.
It's a lot of information. Any questions, Bill? Everyone good on the process, and we'll bring that back in December for approval
Yep.
with the 2020 budget. Okay.
Okay.
The only one comment I would make is just looking at those charts where we sit and just grabbing two of the cities that appear on both charts. I mean, our charge would be $106.47. Moorhead is looking at $149.73, and Fairmont, Minnesota is actually $172. So we're still pretty good value for money.
Yeah. Good point. Scott?
On the water bill side of it, the Reservoir One up at the old, where the water plant is now, as we look to replace that, and this is maybe just a question for down the line, what we might think of. Recently, we've had some conversations about development on the south side of town, and the idea of a water tower down there was raised. When it comes time to decide on that 1.6 million for the Reservoir One, maybe that money ought to go toward the south side water tower, and that option be considered at that time.
I think you're a mind reader. That's exactly, I know our city engineer talked about that. That's something we're going to look at. Is that a feasible option compared to replacing it up at the water plant? So, yep,
We
that's
could always come back and add another reservoir at the water plant later.
right. But
but
if you
maybe
get
the
the
more
storage
current need
capacity
is,
down here, that may work. Now,
Could work.
there's maybe a host of other things we need to think about with that, but that's what they're going to study that, so spot on there, so.
Thanks, Scott. Justin, did you have a, no? Just one quick question out of, so you mentioned that the rates take into consideration, you don't want to bond, we don't want to bond in future years. And just when you look at those different cities, I assume that that's a strategy that you've developed, and not all cities are the same in that. I'm sure cities bond, which keep their rates much
Right.
lower, but then the property tax would be higher to cover the bonds. So is that, you take that all into consideration?
We do, but we don't know what other cities are doing. Now, I said probably 3-4 years ago of water rates without bonding. And what did we do this summer?
Sure.
Oops, we bonded for the Mount Faith project because it made sense with this. Sometimes if a smaller city has to fully, reconstruct their water system, say in one summer, rates could, go up 50, 100%
Sure.
In those cities. So that's why trying to do this in these steps. We also have an old water plant, but the good news with that is it is working well. It is well maintained, and the technology of water plants haven't changed, dramatically in the way we filter water. But so I do want to say it is an older plant. We continue to look at that. We'll be looking at in the future of what other things do we need to do there. Now, these reservoirs are a big part of the plant, so that's a big part of the project, but we're continuing to look at that, and I know we put all new controls out there. We've done building improvements to our plant, but it is a good plant and it's well run. It's aged, but keeping it up, so.
All right, thanks, Bill.
You bet.
Our last item on the agenda is an easement with Otter Tail Power for an electric vehicle charging station, and I'll call on City Administrator Andrew Bremseth.
Yeah, thank you, Your Honor members. Otter Tail Power is seeking a easement agreement with the City of Fergus Falls to install an electric charging station. It would be just to the west of the Lincoln Union Avenue intersection. If you can imagine, like the northeast corner of the service road parking lot is where the installation would take place and would be available for public usage. It was brought to our attention last week that construction on this was starting with all the flags and everything out there. And so in doing a little bit of research, we learned that city staff had inadvertently back in June signed off on this easement and did not bring it to council at that time, which is the proper protocol. So we're bringing it forward at this point in time. Unfortunately, it's already been signed and has been recorded with Otter Tail County, so I'm telling you, you probably don't have much of a choice at this stage of the game, but I'm thankful it's for something that we all agree is probably a good thing and would be open for public usage. And the amount of right-of-way is fairly minimal that they would be using for the electric car charging station, and it still allows the city adequate usage to use that area for whether it be snow storage or like we do today with the big electronic sign that's placed at that intersection. So I think there's plenty of space. In fact, I know there's plenty of space for everybody to work in cooperation in the area. and looking for the council to approve that easement after the fact, so to speak, with Otter Tail Power, so we have that on the record.
Thanks, Andrew. I just mentioned too that for those of you who are into the EV charging station, this would be a level 3, so it's different than the one at the library, but it's like it's a fast charging station, so it'll actually allow people that are traveling to charge quickly. So it puts Fergus on the map as a place that you could stop and charge your vehicle as you're traveling, which we currently don't have. So this is for people from out of town, basically coming into Fergus. So it's a good deal for the community. There's been a lot of people that have been working hard on this project. So, any questions?
I think Tom's got a question.
Tom, someone make the motion first?
I'll offer that and then I have a question.
Okay, sure.
second.
Okay, go ahead, Tom.
Wouldn't we want to put a slower charger in so that they stay in shop longer?
We have one of those at the library.
Okay.
So I mean, I guess the way it works, I've just been told by people who drive the EV, like the people who people charge their vehicles at home at night, so there's no real reason for people locally to use a fast charging station. But if you're from Minneapolis and say you're going, out west or you're going up north or whatever, this allows you to say, all right, I've got another 200 miles, I can stop at Fergus. And it does take 45 minutes or whatever, so they will. And it's downtown, which is great. It's not just up by the interstate, but it's going to bring them into downtown. So a lot of thought went into the placement of this.
And is that like a pay-per-use type of deal? Do we know?
I don't know, but we're not responsible for the
Sure.
cost of electricity. Go ahead, Bill.
I was talking with someone this weekend that does have one of these, and my understanding is that it almost acts like, maybe like your cell phone or something. You use your card and you would be charged for it.
Sure.
So that's,
Yeah, it's a good project.
Yes, I understand it. It's an app on your phone that tells you where they are and how to find them and what kind of charger they are and all that. So if you're going to a given town and you're driving an electric vehicle and you want to stay at a hotel, that'll even tell you which hotels have got that available or where the services are available. And the whole payment business is all on the app too.
yeah, he was showing me the map, and yeah, pretty neat how it,
And if I'm not mistaken, I think that would make us maybe the only charging station between, I think, Monticello and Fargo.
I believe that's right.
Currently, yeah.
So that's a great idea.
Yeah, it really is.
Your Honor, and to Councilmember Kwame's point about the hotel, there is the legwork being done now to add one out at the Bigwood Event Center, Country Inn and Suites facility as well. So I have no idea about the type or any of that stuff, so I'm glad that you were equipped with that today, but would put that facility on the map as well in terms of people looking for that specific amenity.
The only other question I'd have, Andrew, is as far as the space where this is located, the easement doesn't include the place where a car would sit. It's just where the equipment is built. And so the lot where the car would sit, that's still part of the service food lot, right?
Yeah, and Service Food worked with them, figuring that out, the spaces they need, and because obviously space is tight in that parking lot too, but Service Food's on board, they've agreed, so. Any other questions, comments? All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign, that motion carries. And if nothing else to come before the committee, we are adjourned.